So it's been almost a year since I decided to take a peek inside Apple's walled garden, and after years of using Android phones, starting with the Galaxy S3 and going all the way to the Google Pixel XL, Android was my thing. I just really enjoyed the experience of customizing the phone and tweaking the kernel and tweaking ROMs and talking with developers on XDA. That was my thing. I just really enjoyed that process and really enjoy having a phone that was made for me and customized by me. But since I'm a tech person, I always thought that I should try the iOS route, the Apple route, but I never could really justify making the jump, mostly because all the iPhones look pretty boring to me and they never seem to change a lot. Fortunately, that changed last year with the iPhone X. They completely revamped the design, the gestures, the navigation. That was completely new, and most people just didn't really enjoy the notch on the top of the screen. For me, it was always quite okay, I think. For a brief moment, I can even say that I enjoyed it. But a year later, they released the XS and the XS Max, and they are definitely iterative phones with small changes, but I got myself a XS Max, and well, is it really worth it to upgrade from the 10 to the XS Max or from your phone to the XS Max? So let's start with the biggest change, the screen. The screen is the justification for the terrible name for the XS Max and not XS Plus, because it's the biggest screen ever on an iPhone, and so they called it the Max because God knows why. Since I picked the iPhone XS Max, comparing to last year's iPhone X, the screen is just as bright, it's just as sharp and clear and colorful. Just this year you get the option to have that beautiful screen in a 6.5-inch size, and that for me is great for all sorts of things, from watching videos on YouTube to watching movies or just all around using your phone. It's great to have a big screen. There's been some talk that Apple is using a mix of Samsung and LG made panels for this year's iPhone, but at least on my device, the screen is just as good as it was last year, with no huge blue shift when tilting the phone and watching it from the sides. So that's a good thing. If you're coming from a 1440p screen on an Android phone like a Galaxy S9 or a Note, those screens are definitely sharper, but you will only notice the difference in the first 15 minutes of using the iPhone. After that, the screen is great for all use and you shouldn't really worry about that. What you probably should worry about is Apple's lack of understanding of using screen space. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can still use Apple's stock apps in a landscape mode, but for me, the space usage on the screen is definitely lackluster. You don't get any picture-in-picture when watching video or like dual apps like you have on Android, so you just feel like you have a bigger experience with the XS Max compared to the 10. You can't really do much more, you just do the same bigger. The bezels are also the same size as they were last year. They are all the way around the same size except for the notch at the top. If you think the iPhone XS Max has smaller bezels, that's just math working, and it's all about perspective. They are the exact same size as last year's iPhone X, and well, I was slightly disappointed with that. I wanted slightly slimmer bezels, but well, we'll probably get that next year. One definite big improvement I saw in the XS Max when compared to the 10 was the battery. Apple quoted as 1 hour and 30 minutes more than the 10, and that's really just a confusing number. So it's 3,174 milliamp hours, which is a very specific battery size, and that pretty much give you, in my testing, the best battery I got was 9 hours of screen on time, and that includes some movie watching on Plex and some video watching on YouTube, browsing on Reddit and Instagram and Twitter, and that's pretty much it. It was a slow Sunday afternoon and day, to be honest. But day-to-day use, you can definitely see that you'll probably end up your day with 30% more battery than you did with the iPhone X, if that's the case, or if you have an older phone, it'll probably be even more than that. If you're asking me, I don't really think the battery capacity is the sole culprit to the longer lasting battery of the device. I think the A12 Bionic, which is made in a 7nm process, is helping a lot with efficiency. I think that the 4 gigs of RAM combined with the iOS 12 improvements to multitasking makes so that the device keeps apps open in the background for longer, and that pretty much just improves app launch times, and you need less CPU power to open apps at any point. So that's just another reason to tell your friend that likes to furiously close apps to never have anything open ever again on his phone. Just tell him to stop, because it's hurting more than it's helping him for sure. The camera is definitely the big buzzworthy improvement for the iPhone XS, and that can be attributed to 4 or 5 things. Let's call it 5 things. First of all, the smart HDR that comes as a result to the faster processing on the A12 is godsend for pictures on the iPhone XS. You can see better detail on pictures, better dynamic range, and that's just incredible. You can also see, as a second improvement, it's tied to the first one, much better dynamic range when recording video. That's really clear if you're recording someone with the sunset behind. The iPhone X just struggles hard with that. The iPhone XS, no problem exposing face and background without blowing up or darkening way too much anything. The third improvement comes down to the bigger sensor size and the bigger pixels on the sensor. So the sensor on this phone is 32% bigger than last year's iPhone X, and that's always an improvement. I like to shoot my videos with a full frame camera, and that's because the bigger the sensor, the more light you can get in, and the more light, the less noise, and that's just a win-win in any way you look at it. One other big bonus is you get more natural depth of field. I'm not talking about portrait mode, I'm talking about natural depth of field. If you get really close to things, you can get better separation from the background, like you can with a good lens on a big sensor camera. Then we have portrait mode. Now with this year's iPhone, with the improved neural engine inside the A12 Bionic chip, they can analyze the background and segment it in different distances to more naturally blur the scene without just applying the same blur to everything around the subject. They're marketing it as modeled after a 55mm prime lens on a full frame camera. I don't really know if it's all that, but it's definitely an improvement, and you can adjust the blur after the fact, which is pretty cool. But some of these features were available last year. You just had to use a different app that you had to download separately, and the process wasn't all that streamlined. It wasn't super quick. Now it's quick and it's easy and it's integrated in the OS, so it's a win-win in my eyes. And finally, this year's iPhone has a wider angle main camera when compared to last year's. The telephoto lens, it's still the exact same, but the main camera is wider, so you'll probably be able to get more subjects in your frame, or just shoot wider in general, if that's your thing. Now the speakers, they're just great. Last year's speakers on the iPhone, they were pretty good. On my device, they always got a bit distorted on higher volumes. And this year, the speakers are much fuller sounding. It's really hard to pass that through camera, but they sound richer. They even have a little bit of bass. And the stereo separation that you hear Apple talking about is definitely there.
The tide's turning now. How can you tell? The body's come back.
You also can record stereo audio on your device, which is a feature that wasn't available before. And that uses 4 microphones on the device to capture audio from all directions. And when you listen to the video back on your device, it's cool, I have to give them that.
I am Groot. I am Groot.
Now Face ID. Face ID works just as good as it did last year, maybe a little bit more reliable. Apple talks about the improved secure enclave on the device, making the device faster unlocking with your face. In my experience, I don't really feel that it's much faster. It feels more reliable, but not really sure. It's a little bit too early for me to tell. But the improvement I saw last year coming from iOS 11 to iOS 12 was a clear night and day difference. Ever since the first betas that I had installed on my iPhone X, it was much faster. And this iPhone XS Max, when compared to the iPhone X on iOS 12, they are extremely comparable. If you want to go full on scientific on it, it's faster, yes, but day-to-day usage, you're not really gonna find much of a difference there. One thing that I wish Apple included was a way to have landscape mode for Face ID, maybe next year, but this year you're still gonna have to unlock it like this when you are laying down in bed, which is awkward as it ever was, but well, it works. Then Apple did a very un-Apple thing on this device. They added an additional signal band on the top and on the bottom of the device. And on the bottom it looks very weird because it's not symmetrical at all. I'm not sure Johnny Hive is very happy about that, but they added them to improve signal because now the device supports gigabit LTE if your carrier supports that. And on my testing, I think Wi-Fi signal is a bit better when compared to the iPhone X. I have a house with very thick walls and certain places I couldn't get a signal at all before, and now I get 1 bar. Which is good. I should probably just get a mesh network and get better Wi-Fi everywhere, but I just don't. You also get dual SIM support for the first time ever on an iPhone. On most models you'd get a normal SIM and an eSIM, but on my country eSIMs are not available yet, and the dual SIM model is only available in China, which is a feature that they value a lot there. This wouldn't really be a review if I didn't have a couple of complaints with the device, and by far the biggest one is that Apple keeps using Lightning on their phones and iPads, and I still think that's really weird. They completely ditched all other USB, that it's non-Type-C on their laptops, and I think everyone would benefit from iPhones with Type-C ports, but we knew that wasn't gonna happen from the leaks. But they don't even include a fast charger on the box, or even like an iPad charger. They could include like a 10-watt iPad charger, and that would be better. Or they could include a charger that was Type-C to Lightning in the box, which is not. It's just a regular old 5-watt Apple charger that now with the bigger battery it charges even slower. And if you want to buy another charger to get fast charging, it'll be 70 to 80 bucks. And also I still think it's pretty cheap for them not to include the headphone jack adapter on the box. I guess that they're trying to push for like a wireless feature, but most people are not there yet, and a lot of people still need this adapter, and the proof of that is it's the best selling product for 2 years straight for Apple, just like the Type-C to Lightning cable is, because people still need it, and now it's not in the box, so they have to buy even more of them. A big yay for the trillion-dollar company. And finally, the price. I always find it quite funny when I hear people in the US generally talking about how expensive iPhones are. If you want to try to buy an iPhone in Europe, it's still more expensive. In Portugal it's not as extreme, but I paid $12.49 for my phone. 12.49 euros? That's 1,300 bucks? That's really expensive. And for all that money, you get a great device that, well, ticks all the boxes like MKBHD would probably have said by now. Great screen, great camera, great battery life, great performance. It's a great phone. I just wish there was more competition for this guy outside of the Apple world. Maybe I would have chosen a different phone then, but well, this has been it, I think. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and yeah, see you soon.